It's being considered one of the most violent events in a part of Baja California.
Breaking tonight, a mass
killed in a
shooting
racing
on the
event at
south
San
side leaves
Vicente,
2
about
people
55
dead
miles south
and
of the
3
border.
others wounded.
Various security corporations tell media partners Tamaulipas that 5 vehicles drove up to the participants of the race and opened fire this afternoon. 7 people nearby were also injured. Mexican law enforcement agencies launched an operation in
It seems that every day we hear about a mass shooting, and that's because in the first half of 2023, 135 mass shootings have occurred, just in the first half of this year. That's more than one every single day. We have been desensitized to shootings. Most countries other than the US rarely have shootings. The only countries with more gun deaths are poorer and less developed countries, like Brazil and Venezuela. The US is one of the most wealthy countries in the world, but yet it's still so unsafe, and that's because of our gun laws.
Laws are changed through the legislative process of the government, where a bill is proposed, introduced, and voted by a chamber. But especially with gun laws, they don't make it past this stage. This is Nathan Dahm, one of the Oklahoma state senators, who's a Republican and is against gun registration and background checks, among many other things. And this is John Stewart. He will be interviewing Senator Dahm, discussing guns and so much more. The full video will be linked in the description, as well as any other videos we used.
I'm a strong proponent of the Second Amendment. I believe the right to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. That's the one right that's listed in the Constitution that uses that very specific affirmative language, shall not be infringed.
It's also the one right that uses the phrase well-regulated.
Correct, when it's talking about the militia and the state.
By the way, just for clarity's sake,
yeah,
I'm not against the Second Amendment.
And neither do we.
I'm not against, I don't want to ban guns. But you're saying more guns makes us more safe.
Yes.
So when we got 400 million guns in the country, we had an increase and gun deaths went up. So when exactly does this curve hit that takes it down? Would 1 billion guns do it?
Let's just run those numbers, 400 million, 50,000. You're talking about less than a fraction of not even 1%, of 100th of a percent.
But it goes up, not down. So your argument is backwards.
But if you want, okay, so let's come up with a solution. Okay, so one of the issues, a contributing factor, again, I believe it's the individual that is the problem.
So your solution to that is give them more guns.
More guns doesn't make us safer. Every year, guns come into the country and gun deaths go up.
If you don't have background checks and you don't have registration and permitting, how do you know who has a problem in terms of the people who you're giving a gun to?
With that aside, guns can go to the wrong people because
if we had gun registration, if we were able to track purchases, they have a technology that every bullet would be stamped with an individual like a fingerprint. If we had an ATF that wasn't defunded, we would be able to enforce gun laws more effectively, and we would be able to solve gun crimes more effectively. You're against all of that.
Because the person is the threat, not the firearm, not the knife.
I get it.
The person and the individual is the one that is the concern here.
But you don't want anything that could help law enforcement or society determine whether or not a person is a good guy with a gun or a bad guy with a gun.
Gun crimes could be easier to solve as well.
But why take away their tools?
Because certain of their tools that they're using would be infringements upon the people's right to keep and bear arms, upon their constitutional rights, upon due process, upon other things.
That registering is an infringement?
Yes.
That statement is backwards, and John will prove it.
Okay. Is voting a right?
It's a right for citizens, yes.
Do you have to do anything to do it?
Yes.
What do you have to do?
It depends on the state.
What do you have to do?
Sometimes you have to be at least 18 years old.
What do you have to do?
And in some places you have to have a government-issued ID.
What do you have to? You have to
be on the voter rolls?
Register. You have to register. So you have to register to a right. Is that an infringement?
Does the right to voting say shall not be infringed?
Oh, so this is just a semantic argument now.
No, it's not.
You believe voting rights can be infringed because it doesn't say specifically shall not be infringed.
Is it an infringement upon a 17-year-old's right to vote, since they don't have that right to vote?
No.
Oh, it's not an infringement on them?
No, okay. Absolutely not.
Why not?
Because you're the one making the argument, not me. I'm saying even rights have responsibilities, and that within those responsibilities are responsibilities and order Otherwise, it's chaotic. I'll go you one further.
John also brings up that Don wants to ban
Drag show readings to children.
To minors, yes.
Why?
Why?
What are you protecting?
Why can we prohibit children from voting, those under 18 from voting?
Why are you
but
banning?
Also that?
Is that free speech? Are you infringing on that performer's free speech?
They can continue to exercise their free speech, just not in front of a child.
Why?
Because the government does have a responsibility to protect.
I'm sorry?
The government does have a responsibility in certain instances to
What's
protect
the
children.
leading cause of death amongst children in this country? And I'm going to give you a hint. It's not drag show readings to children.
Correct, yes.
So what is it?
I'm presuming you're going to say it's firearms.
No, I'm not going to say it like it's an opinion. That's what it is. It's firearms. More than cancer, more than car accidents. And what you're telling me is you don't mind infringing free speech to protect children from this amorphous thing that you think of. But when it comes to children that have died, you don't give a flying fuck to stop that because that shall not be infringed. That is hypocrisy at its highest order.
The NRA supports politicians that support them with
money, money, money.
Many will vote against things like background checks, even though that 90%
support background checks before you buy a gun and support keeping terrorists or would-be terrorists from getting guns. There's virtually nothing in this country in which 90% of Americans agree. This is an exceptional issue to have that much consensus, and yet the NRA, the gun lobby, doesn't support it. And right now, there are a lot of members of Congress that are listening to them instead of listening to their constituents.
That's because, again, they're getting paid by the NRA.
Here you have in Uvalde, 19 children and 2 adults killed. They're digging graves, and you go to the NRA, and one after another, the conference attendees will say, that's a tragedy, I feel for those people. And yet they also view themselves as a set of victims at the moment. They argue that they are being, set upon by the left trying to take their guns. If you're looking for a measure of the NRA's influence, just look at who shows up at their conference. It's Ted Cruz, the senator, it's Kristi Noem, the governor of South Dakota. Both of those people may run for president. And beyond that, former President Trump, the head of the Republican Party.
From this day forward, every school in America should have a police officer or an armed resource officer on duty at all times.
There's a reason that they come. They need to speak to that electorate. Things entirely hyper-partisan now and hyper-polarized, so that the NRA is now effectively a wing of the conservative movement.
Gun laws are completely political, like many other things, but they shouldn't be. Politicians and many others alike should recognize real, genuine deaths of the American people that they aren't doing anything to prevent.
Did you know that 500 Americans died of guns every single day? It's a 13.7 out of 100,000 mortality rate in the U.S. It's a leading cause in children's deaths in 2020. Even with all these laws in America getting created, it's still proven to be inefficient. If we look at the biggest state in America, California, we can see some better change. Gavin Newsom said that a gun lobbyist is willing to sacrifice our children to line their pockets.
It's no surprise that the United States has been plagued with gun violence issues. However, unlike other countries, the U.S. has not done anything to solve this. The Port Arthur Massacre in 1996 changed Australia forever. Martin Bryant killed 35 and wounded 23 in the deadliest Australian shooting in history, and the 11th deadliest in the world. However, Australia recovered from these incidents, implementing a prohibition on semi-automatic and automatic rifles, a gun buyback program, and a national gun registry. These laws are so strict, in fact, that you can't even play airsoft in Australia. The laws work to immediate effect, and nowadays Australia is known for being an exceptionally safe place when it comes to gun violence.
Gun buybacks are very helpful, as evident in Australia, covered 10 seconds ago. Recently in Serbia, there were 2 mass shootings, so they put in place a gun buyback program. 1 month for people to turn in any unregistered guns without consequences.
Do 8. juna za nelegalno oružje je to bez ikakve odgovornosti, bez ičega. a posle 8. juna država će represivno delovati i kazne će biti ogromne.
See that Marty Daniel and Christopher Killoy, the CEOs of two major gun companies, Daniel Defenses and Ruegner's, they do not want to put fingerprint scanners on guns to protect children. They don't think that the extra cost is sufficient enough to save children's lives.
Other industries take seriously their responsibility to manufacture products that protect consumers. With firearms, this responsibility is a matter of life and death. One study found that nearly 40% of accidental gun deaths could be prevented with technology that prevents non-authorized users from firing guns. And these ideas are not new. This study was published nearly 20 years ago. Yet technology like fingerprint scanners or bracelets with radio frequency identifiers are nowhere near the standard for firearms. Mr. Killoy, how many of your firearms come equipped with fingerprint scanning mechanisms?
Congresswoman, none of them currently come equipped with such a device.
None. Mr. Daniel, how about Daniel Defense? How many of your weapons come equipped with fingerprint identity scanners?
Congresswoman, we do not sell any type of firearm this way. Our customers have not asked for such.
Okay, so that's a no. This is my cell phone. Mr. Killoy, it scans my fingerprint each time I go to unlock it. Is this a weapon?
No, ma'am.
Can this fire bullets that shred people's vital organs, this phone?
No, Congresswoman, it can't.
Then why should this device require more steps to operate than your company's firearms, which have been used in accidental shootings, mass shootings, and homicides?
Congresswoman, respectfully, your cell phone doesn't generate internal pressures of upwards of 60,000 pounds per square inch. The operating system of a firearm is extremely dynamic, extreme high pressures, lots of moving pieces, and first and foremost, a firearm, especially one used for self-defense, needs to function reliably.
These fingerprint scanners are offered in some firearms. Some manufacturers sell this, and they work. Your company and Mr. Daniel's company chooses not to. Safety features like chamber-loaded indicators or magazine disconnects are required for any gun sold in my home state of California. A magazine disconnect prevents a gun from firing if the magazine is not attached. My kids' Nerf guns have this safety feature. This decades-old safety feature prevents guns from shooting bullets that remain in the chamber after a magazine has been removed. Mr. Killoy, do all Ruger rifles that have magazines come equipped with magazine disconnects?
Congresswoman, magazine disconnects typically are a feature offered on a handgun, a pistol in particular.
Do all your handguns or pistols have magazine disconnects, sir?
Some do and some do not.
Magazine disconnects are also not new. These features come standard in every gun that is sold in my home state, and those features prevent accidental deaths. In 2020, 149 children died in incidents when the person did not intend to fire the gun. Mr. Killoy, Mr. Daniel, kids are dying because you refuse to implement these safety technologies like fingerprint scanners and magazine disconnects. And these technologies were studied and developed decades ago. Mr. Killoy, will your company commit to adding fingerprint scanners to every firearm Ruger manufactures?
No, Congresswoman, we will not.
Mr. Daniel, same question. Will your company commit to adding fingerprint scanners to every Daniel Defense firearm?
Congresswoman, our guns fire when there's a bullet in the chamber, and it doesn't fire when there's not a bullet in the chamber. A gun should be kept, and if it does not want to be fired, if the owner does not want to fire it, they should not keep around in the chamber.
But the question is, will you commit to adding fingerprint scanners as a safety technology to every Daniel Defense firearm? Yes or no?
A conversation that gets brought up frequently is gun alternatives. There are many safer alternatives that can still be valid options for self-defense, such as non-lethal projectiles. A non-lethal projectile is a weapon used to incapacitate a target but not kill. Many people in the survivalist community agree that this is a great alternative. Some examples of valid gun alternatives are pepper spray and tasers. While many may have their doubts, non-lethal projectiles can protect you in a case of self-defense and also will protect the community from further gun violence. They are a much safer option. According to justice.gov, only 2 deaths due to non-lethal projectiles fired by police officers in the line of duty have been recorded since their use. This is astronomically lower than that of guns, proving there are equally reliable and safer alternatives to guns. A best case scenario would be strict gun laws, such as the ones in Japan. Japan's annual gun deaths are in the single digits each year. The firearm and sword possession control law states that nobody can possess a firearm, with notable exceptions for hunting, sport, and industrial uses. If the USA could implement a law like this, I believe that there would be much improvement.
What is realistic is strict background checks that make it so that only the right people are qualified to have a gun. That make it so only the right people are qualified to own a gun. These background checks should consider mental health conditions, domestic violence convictions, restraining orders, and similar offenses. These background checks should be enforced everywhere to prevent certain loopholes and to ensure that all buyers undergo the same screening process.
Ideally, police and fire stations should do more frequent gun buyback programs. These would have a no questions asked policy so people could turn in their guns to authorities and get money from them. I think gun shops have better safety features like finger scanners, which would be used to turn the safety on and off and to unload the magazine. This would prevent misfirings from happening. I think that gun shops should also not be allowed to sell automatic weapons like the AR-15, for instance. I think rifles and handguns are just what we need for self-defense and or for hunting.
We don't want to outright ban guns, we just want to make them safer.
If everyone in America wanted there not to be guns, there wouldn't be any, but there still are. Many Americans would disagree with the solutions we have proposed. That's okay. Solutions often involve compromises, and hopefully government officials can reach one that appeals to their beliefs, but more importantly, appeals to the safety of the American people.